My name is Madison. I am 33, and until last year, I thought I knew what family meant. I built a marketing career in Chicago, while my sister Emma remained the golden child back in Boston. When my parents announced they were giving her everything in their will, I swallowed my hurt like always. But when I discovered Emma's betrayal and confronted them, my dad's text was crystal clear. "Don't reach out or visit, we're done." I simply replied, "Understood." The next morning, my phone exploded with messages I never expected. Before I tell you what those messages were, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you want more stories like mine. I grew up in a comfortable suburban home outside Boston with my parents Robert and Linda and my sister Emma, who's 3 years younger than me. From the earliest days I can remember, there was always a subtle but unmistakable difference in how we were treated. I was the responsible one, straight A student part-time job at 16, always planning ahead. Emma was the social butterfly, charming, spontaneous, and somehow able to wrap our parents around her finger with just a smile. Where I was praised for my grades, Emma was celebrated for simply being Emma. The pattern was established early. I worked for recognition, while Emma received it freely. When I was 12, I started saving my allowance for a bike I wanted. After 3 months of diligently setting aside every dollar, I was halfway to my goal. That same week, Emma mentioned casually at dinner that she thought the neighbor's new bike was pretty. The next day, a similar one appeared in our garage, a surprise gift for her. When I asked about my bike, Mom said, "You're so good at saving, sweetie. We know you'll get there." I did eventually buy my own bike 4 months later. High school only amplified these differences. I worked weekends at the local grocery store, fitting shifts around advanced placement classes and extracurriculars that would look good on college applications. Meanwhile, Emma's allowance increased because, as Dad put it, her social life is important for her development. When Emma crashed Dad's car after taking it without permission, they focused on making sure she wasn't too upset about the incident. When I borrowed the car without explicitly asking, even though I had a license and Emma didn't, I was grounded for a month. College was where the disparity became impossible to ignore. I received partial scholarships to Boston University, but still needed substantial student loans. I worked 20 hours a week at a campus coffee shop while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. My parents contributed what they called what they could afford, about a quarter of my tuition. 2 years later, when Emma started at a private college with higher tuition, they covered all her costs, plus a nice apartment off campus because dorm life would be too stressful for her. I lived in the dorms all 4 years. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a marketing firm in Chicago. Moving away from Boston was both a professional decision and a personal one. I needed space to build my own life away from the constant comparisons and unspoken family hierarchy. Emma stayed in Boston, bouncing between jobs that never seemed to quite fit with our parents, always providing a financial safety net. Despite the distance and the history of unequal treatment, I maintained regular contact with my family. Sunday phone calls, holiday visits, birthday gifts. I did what was expected of a good daughter. I told myself that family relationships were complex, and that comparing my parents' love for Emma versus me was childish. When I met Thomas at an industry conference in my late 20s, he noticed the dynamics immediately. After our first Thanksgiving together with my family, he asked pointed questions about why Emma received so much attention, while my professional achievements were barely acknowledged. I defended my family reflexively, explaining that Emma simply needed more support, and that my parents showed love in different ways. Thomas looked unconvinced, but dropped the subject. As we grew more serious, Thomas became more outspoken about what he saw as unfair treatment. "They take advantage of your responsibility," he said after I spent hours helping my parents navigate a tax issue that Emma, who lived 15 minutes away from them, was too busy to help with. I brushed off his concerns, not ready to face the painful truth that maybe my family would never value me the way they valued my sister. Thomas and I married when I was 30 in a ceremony that my parents contributed to modestly, while commenting multiple times how they were saving for Emma's future wedding, despite Emma not being in a serious relationship at the time. Thomas squeezed my hand tightly each time they mentioned it, his way of saying he noticed, and it wasn't right. But I smiled and thanked them for their contribution, determined to focus on the positive. My career continued to flourish. By 33, I was an executive at one of Chicago's top marketing firms. I had worked hard, strategic, and smart to get there. Thomas had built his own successful career as an architect. We bought a beautiful condo in Lincoln Park, paid down most of my student loans, and started discussing the possibility of children. From the outside, my life looked perfect, but family gatherings remained exercises in emotional restraint. Every accomplishment of mine was met with polite acknowledgement before the conversation quickly turned to Emma's latest venture or challenge. When I received a major industry award, my mother's first response was, "That's nice, sweetie. Did I tell you Emma's thinking about starting her own business? We're so excited for her." I had accepted this as my normal. I told myself I was the strong one who didn't need the validation Emma clearly did. I convinced myself that my independence was a gift, not the result of being treated as less deserving of support. I believed this was what adult relationships with parents looked like: complicated but manageable. I had no idea how dramatically everything was about to change. The revelation came during what should have been a routine visit home for Dad's 65th birthday. Thomas and I flew in from Chicago, bringing an expensive bottle of Dad's favorite whiskey and tickets to a Red Sox game. He's been a lifelong fan. The dinner started pleasantly enough. Mom made Dad's favorite pot roast, Emma brought her latest boyfriend, and we all made the appropriate small talk about work weather and local news. After cake, Dad cleared his throat in that way that signaled he had something important to say. "Your mother and I have been doing some estate planning," he announced, glass of whiskey in hand. "We've updated our will, and we wanted to let you girls know the arrangements while we're all together." I nodded, expecting something straightforward about equal divisions, or perhaps specific family heirlooms designated for each of us. "We've decided that Emma will inherit the house and the majority of our assets." Dad continued, his tone matter of fact, as if he were discussing a change in garbage collection days. "Madison, we've set aside Grandma's jewelry collection for you, which we know you've always loved." I felt Thomas tense beside me. Grandma's jewelry, while sentimentally valuable, was worth maybe $5,000. The house alone was worth over $1 million in the current market, not counting their retirement accounts and other investments. "Oh," I managed, struggling to keep my expression neutral. "I see." Emma didn't bother hiding her smile. "That's so generous, I don't even know what to say." Mom reached over to pat Emma's hand. "We know you'll take good care of the place, honey." Thomas cleared his throat. "That seems like quite a disparate division. Is there a particular reason for the decision?" Dad looked slightly annoyed at the question. "We thought it through carefully. Madison has a successful career and has always been financially responsible. Emma's path has been more variable. She could use the security more. Plus," Mom added with a warm smile toward Emma, "Emma has always been so attached to this house. It makes sense she would be the one to keep it in the family." The subtext was clear. Emma had stayed close to home while I had moved away. Emma needed them more. Emma deserved more. I excused myself to use the bathroom, needing a moment alone. Staring at my reflection in the mirror, I coached myself to breathe. This wasn't about love, I told myself. It was about practicality. I was successful. I didn't need their money. It was fine. But it wasn't fine. It was the culmination of a lifetime of being valued less, of having my independence used against me, of watching my sister receive more simply for being needier. Later that night, after Emma and her boyfriend left, I asked my parents if we could talk privately. Thomas offered to give us space, but I asked him to stay. I needed his strength. "I understand your decision is made," I began carefully, "but I'd like to better understand why Emma receives the vast majority of everything. Is it because you feel I've been a less worthy daughter in some way?" Mom looked shocked. "Of course not. You've always been so capable, Madison. You've built this wonderful life for yourself. So I'm being punished for being responsible." The words came out sharper than I intended. Dad's face hardened. "Nobody's being punished. We're making decisions based on who needs what. You have Thomas, your career, your life in Chicago. Emma has always struggled more." "Emma has struggled because you've never required her to stand on her own 2 feet," Thomas said quietly. "You've rewarded her dependence while taking Madison's independence for granted." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "That's not fair. We love both our daughters equally." I took a deep breath. "If you loved us equally, wouldn't you treat us equally? Or at least acknowledge my contributions to this family? I've flown back for every emergency, helped with paperwork, researched Dad's medical issues, all while working full-time. Emma lives 15 minutes away and barely helps with anything." "Emma has a different personality," Dad said defensively. "She gets overwhelmed easily." "And I don't get overwhelmed." My voice cracked slightly. "I just hide it better because I've always had to be the strong one." The conversation circled for another hour, with my parents remaining firmly entrenched in their position. Emma needed more help. I was fine on my own. The decision was made out of love for both of us. I was being selfish for questioning it. We drove back to our hotel in silence, Thomas occasionally reaching over to squeeze my hand. Back in our room, the tears finally came. "It's not about the money," I sobbed as Thomas held me. "It's what it represents. A lifetime of being valued less because I didn't demand more." "I know," he whispered, "and you deserve better. You always have." The next morning, we had breakfast with my parents as planned. The conversation was strained but polite, everyone pretending the previous night hadn't happened. I maintained my composure, but something fundamental had shifted inside me. I began to see with painful clarity how the dynamic with my family had shaped me. My need to achieve, my reluctance to ask for help, my habit of putting others' needs before my own. We returned to Chicago, and life continued. I didn't mention the will again during our Sunday calls. What would be the point? But the knowledge sat heavy within me, a constant reminder that in my parents' eyes, I would always be worth less than my sister. I didn't realize then that this was just the beginning of a much larger storm. 3 months after the inheritance revelation, Dad had a heart attack. Mom called me, panic in her voice as they were loading him into the ambulance. I booked the first flight to Boston, called my boss from the taxi to the airport, and landed 3 hours later with nothing but my purse and the clothes on my back. I went straight to the hospital where I found Mom alone in the waiting room, looking small and frightened. "Where's Emma?" I asked after hugging her. "She's coming later. She had an important meeting she couldn't reschedule," Mom said, dabbing at her eyes. Dad's condition was serious but stable. He would need surgery and then significant lifestyle changes. The cardiologist talked to us about medication, diet, and follow-up care. I took notes on everything while Mom nodded blankly beside me, clearly overwhelmed. Emma finally arrived 7 hours later, making a dramatic entrance with tears and questions that the doctor had already answered hours before. I bit my tongue and focused on what mattered: Dad's recovery. I called Thomas that night from the hospital cafeteria. "I need to stay for a while," I told him. "Dad's having surgery tomorrow and Mom can't handle all this alone." "What about Emma?" he asked, though I could tell from his tone he already knew the answer. "Emma has work commitments," I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Her current job was as a part-time yoga instructor. Somehow this was too demanding to allow her to help with our father's medical crisis. My boss was understanding, allowing me to work remotely for 2 weeks. I set up at my parents' dining room table, working early mornings and late evenings, so I could spend days at the hospital and helping Mom. Emma visited Dad for an hour each evening, usually arriving just as dinner was served to patients, making a show of her concern, before leaving because she was too emotionally drained to stay longer. During my second week in Boston, while organizing my parents' paperwork to help Mom deal with insurance claims, I discovered a stack of unpaid medical bills in Dad's desk. Digging deeper, I found their financial situation was more precarious than I'd realized. Dad's retirement account had several large withdrawals over the past year. When I gently questioned Mom about it, she became evasive. "Your father handles the finances. I'm sure everything is fine." That evening, when Emma left after her brief appearance at the hospital, I stayed behind with Dad. He was recovering well, but tired easily. "Dad, I found some unpaid medical bills while helping Mom with the insurance," I said carefully. "And I noticed some large withdrawals from your retirement account. Is everything okay financially?" Dad's face reddened slightly. "That's not something you need to worry about. We're fine. If there are problems, I can help," I offered. "Thomas and I are doing well. We don't need your money," Dad interrupted sharply, then immediately softened his tone. "But thank you for offering. It's just been a complicated year." I didn't push further that day, but my concern grew. The next morning, while searching for a specific insurance document Mom needed, I found bank statements showing regular large transfers to Emma over the past 2 years. The total was staggering, over $70,000. That evening, I approached my parents together in Dad's hospital room during a time I knew Emma wouldn't be there. "I need to ask you something important," I began. "I found statements showing large transfers to Emma. Is she in some kind of trouble?" Mom looked at Dad, who sighed deeply. "Emma's had some financial difficulties. She invested in a friend's business that didn't pan out, and she had some credit card debt we helped with. $70,000 worth." I tried to keep my tone neutral. Mom looked shocked that I knew the specific amount. "She's going through a tough time, Madison. We're just helping her get back on her feet. And these unpaid medical bills, the withdrawals from retirement savings, are those related to helping Emma?" Dad looked away. We needed to access some funds. The bills got a little behind. It's temporary. The realization hit me hard. My parents were endangering their own financial security, possibly their ability to pay for Dad's current medical expenses, to bail out Emma from her latest crisis, and they still planned to leave her the house and the majority of their estate if there was anything left by then. "Let me help," I said firmly. "I can cover Dad's outstanding medical bills and set up a system to make sure nothing falls through the cracks going forward." "We couldn't ask you to do that," Mom protested weakly. "You're not asking. I'm offering." I took a deep breath. "Dad needs to focus on recovery, not financial stress. Please let me help." After some resistance, they agreed. I paid off $15,000 in medical bills, set up automatic payments for ongoing treatments, and created a spreadsheet to track everything. I didn't mention what I knew about the money given to Emma. That conversation would need to wait. For the next 3 months, I flew to Boston every other weekend. I'd work extra hours Monday through Thursday, take a red-eye Thursday night, spend Friday through Sunday, helping my parents, and take the last flight back Sunday night to be at my desk Monday morning. Thomas was supportive, but concerned about the toll it was taking on me. "You're exhausting yourself," he said one Wednesday evening when I fell asleep at the dinner table. "And where is Emma in all this? Still too busy with yoga classes to drive her own parents to medical appointments." He was right. Despite living minutes away, Emma's contributions were minimal. She'd show up for family dinners, complain about her job or boyfriend troubles, accept Mom's sympathy and occasional checks for groceries, and disappear until the next time. Meanwhile, I was running myself ragged trying to manage my career, my marriage, and my parents' care from hundreds of miles away. The resentment built slowly but steadily. Each time Emma made an excuse to avoid taking Dad to physical therapy, each time Mom mentioned helping Emma with her rent just until she gets settled in her new place. Each time I missed an important work event because I was in Boston handling something Emma could have easily done, the anger and exhaustion compounded. Thomas suggested I needed to establish boundaries. "You can't keep this pace up forever," he said. "Something has to change." But how could I step back when my parents genuinely needed help? Dad was recovering but slowly. Mom was overwhelmed by the medical details. Emma was unreliable at best. I felt trapped between my responsibility to my parents and my responsibility to myself and my marriage. I didn't realize things were about to reach a breaking point that would force the issue in ways I never could have anticipated. By Dad's 4-month checkup, his condition had improved significantly. He was following his diet, taking his medications, and gradually increasing his physical activity. Mom, however, was showing signs of strain. The constant worry and caregiving responsibilities were taking a toll on her. During one of my weekend visits, I suggested hiring part-time help, someone to assist with housekeeping and driving Dad to appointments a few days a week. I offered to cover the cost. "That would be such a relief," Mom admitted. "The house is getting away from me, and coordinating all these appointments is overwhelming." When I mentioned the idea at Sunday dinner, Emma immediately objected. "That's a completely unnecessary expense," she said sharply. "Mom can handle things fine, and I help when I can." "When you can," I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. "In 4 months, you've taken Dad to exactly 2 appointments. Mom is exhausted." "Not everyone can be perfect like you, Madison," Emma snapped. "Some of us have demanding jobs too." I bit back the retort that her 20 hours a week teaching yoga hardly compared to my 60-plus-hour work weeks that I was still managing while helping our parents. Instead, I took a deep breath. "This isn't about me versus you, Emma. It's about getting Mom and Dad the support they need. They have support. They have family. They don't need strangers in their house." Dad raised a hand to quiet us both. "Let's table this discussion for now. Your mother and I will think about it." Later, while helping Mom with the dishes, I noticed a past due notice for their property taxes tucked under a cookbook. When Mom went to check on Dad, I quickly looked through the stack of mail by the phone. More bills, more late notices. This didn't make sense. I had set up a system to ensure all essential bills were paid automatically. I waited until Monday after returning to Chicago to do some digging. I had online access to their accounts to manage the medical payments. What I discovered turned my concern to alarm. There had been multiple large cash withdrawals from their checking account over the past 2 months, totaling nearly $20,000, none of which had been mentioned to me. I called Mom when I knew Dad would be at physical therapy. "Mom, I noticed some large withdrawals from your checking account. Is everything okay?" A long pause. "Everything's fine, honey. We just had some expenses." "$20,000 worth in the past 8 weeks. What kind of expenses?" Another pause. Madison, your father and I can manage our own money. The past due notices in the kitchen suggest otherwise, I said gently. Mom, if you and Dad need financial help, please tell me. But if Emma is taking money again… Emma has nothing to do with this, Mom interrupted, but her voice lacked conviction. We've been helping her through a rough patch, that's all. While falling behind on your own bills, Mom, this isn't sustainable. Dad's health should be the priority right now. Don't tell me what our priorities should be, she said, a rare flash of anger in her voice. Emma is going through a difficult time. And what about your difficult time, Dad's recovery? The house you might lose if property taxes don't get paid. You're overreacting. We'll figure it out. The conversation ended awkwardly with nothing resolved. I was frustrated, but uncertain what to do next. I couldn't force my parents to make different decisions with their money, even if those decisions were harmful. The following weekend, I flew back to Boston, determined to get to the bottom of the situation. I arrived to find Emma's car in the driveway, unusual for a Friday afternoon when she typically taught classes. I entered without knocking, using my key. Voices from the kitchen fell silent as the door closed behind me. I found Emma, Mom, and Dad seated at the kitchen table. A checkbook lay open between them. Madison, we weren't expecting you until tonight, Mom said quickly, closing the checkbook. I got an earlier flight. I set down my bag, eyes fixed on Emma. What's going on here? Just helping Mom and Dad with some financial stuff, Emma said smoothly. Nothing important. I looked at Dad, whose expression was uncharacteristically evasive. Dad, what kind of financial stuff? Before he could answer, I noticed a bank statement on the counter behind them. I moved quickly to pick it up before anyone could stop me. It showed a transfer from their home equity line of credit, $30,000, made the previous day. Why are you taking out more debt? I asked, my heart pounding. Your bills are covered. I've made sure of it. Emma stood. This is none of your business, Madison. It became my business when I started paying Dad's medical bills, I replied, turning back to my parents. What is this money for? Mom looked at Dad, who sighed heavily. Emma needs to consolidate some debts. We're just helping her out. Again, after the $70,000 last year and the $20,000 over the past 2 months wasn't enough. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. Emma's face contorted with anger. Been spying on us, have you, typical Madison, always thinking she knows best? I know enough to see that you're draining our parents dry. I was shouting now, years of suppressed frustration boiling over. They're taking out loans against their house, which they're giving to you anyway, so you can avoid facing the consequences of your own financial decisions. Madison, Dad's stern voice cut through my tirade. That's enough. No, it's not enough, I said, fighting back tears. You nearly had a heart attack from stress, Dad. Part of that stress was financial. Now you're making it worse by going into debt for Emma, who has never shown an ounce of financial responsibility. Emma's face turned red. You think you're so perfect, don't you? Miss Successful Career, Miss Perfect Marriage, Miss I Fly In to Save the Day. You have no idea what my life is like. I know you've been taking advantage of Mom and Dad for years, I said coldly, and they've enabled it because for some reason your needs have always mattered more than anyone else's. You're just jealous because they love me more, Emma spat. The room fell silent. Mom gasped softly. Emma, that's not true, she whispered, but the lack of immediate forceful denial from both my parents spoke volumes. I looked at them, really looked at them, my father with his averted eyes, my mother with her hands trembling slightly. And something broke inside me. I've paid your medical bills. I've flown back and forth for months. I've managed your medications, driven you to appointments, researched specialists, all while working full-time and maintaining my own household. And this is how you repay me, by emptying your home equity to give Emma more money she'll never repay, while planning to give her everything in your will anyway. Madison, you don't understand, Dad began. I understand perfectly. I cut him off. I understand that no matter what I do, how responsible I am, how much I help, I will never be as important to you as Emma. That's not fair, Mom said, tears in her eyes. No, it's not fair, I agreed. None of this has ever been fair. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. Where are you going? Dad called after me. Back to the hotel, I need some space. Don't be dramatic, Madison, Emma said. You always do this, make everything about you, then storm off. I whirled around. When have I ever made anything about me? My entire life has been about accommodating this family's dysfunction, about accepting less so. Emma could have more about being strong so everyone else could be weak. I'm done. I left, ignoring their calls to come back. I drove to my hotel in a daze, checked in, and collapsed on the bed, emotionally spent. Thomas called an hour later. "How's Boston?" "Terrible," I said, and the whole story poured out between sobs. "Come home," he said simply. "Come home to Chicago to me. Let them figure this out on their own." "But Dad's health. Your dad is recovering well from what you've told me. Your mom is capable, and Emma is right there. Let her step up for once." He was right. I had done everything I could, sacrificed my time, my energy, my peace of mind. And for what? To watch my parents drain their resources for my sister, while treating me as an afterthought. "I'll book a flight for tomorrow," I decided. "Good, I love you, Madison. You deserve better than this." After hanging up, I tried to call my parents to explain my decision more calmly, but they didn't answer. I left a voicemail saying I'd be returning to Chicago the next day, and that we could talk once everyone had cooled down. I went to bed emotionally exhausted, but oddly peaceful. Something had shifted. I had finally spoken my truth after years of silent acceptance. My phone buzzed at 11:23 p.m. with a text from Dad. "Your behavior today was unacceptable. Until you can apologize to your sister and respect our decisions, don't reach out or visit. We're done." I stared at the words, feeling a strange sense of calm amid the pain. After a lifetime of being the good daughter, the responsible one, the one who always came through, this was how it ended. Not with gratitude, but with rejection. I typed a single word in response: "Understood." Then I turned off my phone, curled up in the hotel bed, and cried myself to sleep. The persistent buzz of my phone pulled me from a fitful sleep. Groggily, I reached for it, expecting to see my usual morning work emails. Instead, I found 17 missed calls and over 30 text messages. Most from my mother, a few from Dad, and surprisingly, even one from Emma. My heart pounded as I opened Mom's first text. "Madison, please call us immediately. Something terrible has happened." The next message: "Emma emptied our accounts. We just got the alert. $42,000 gone." Then, "Your father is beside himself. The bank says she came in yesterday afternoon with a signed withdrawal slip. We don't remember signing anything." With shaking hands, I scrolled through the remaining messages. The story unfolded like a nightmare. Emma had apparently been forging their signatures for months. The $30,000 home equity withdrawal I'd interrupted had been stopped, but not before she'd managed to clean out their checking and savings accounts. The bank was investigating, but the money was already gone. The most recent text from Mom sent just 20 minutes ago. "We found gambling receipts in Emma's old room, tens of thousands of dollars. We had no idea. Please call us. We need you." Dad's messages were shorter, but equally desperate. "Madison, I'm sorry. You were right. Please call." "We made a terrible mistake. Please come back." Even Emma had texted, "They know everything. I'm sorry." I sat on the edge of the hotel bed trying to process this dramatic turn of events. After years of being dismissed and taken for granted, after being told not to reach out or visit just hours ago, suddenly I was needed. My phone rang again. The family lawyer Richard Jenkins, who had handled my parents' affairs for decades. "Madison, thank goodness I reached you. Your parents asked me to call. We have a situation." "I've seen the texts," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Emma stole their money." "It's worse than that, I'm afraid. There appears to be a pattern of financial exploitation going back at least 2 years. The withdrawals you noticed were just the tip of the iceberg. Emma and her boyfriend seem to have been systematically draining your parents' accounts." "Her boyfriend, Kevin?" "Yes. We have reason to believe he may be involved in some questionable financial schemes. The police are looking for both of them now." I closed my eyes, feeling a complex mix of vindication and sorrow. How are my parents? Devastated, humiliated. "Your father's blood pressure is concerning his doctor. They've been asking for you." "Tell them I'll be there in an hour." Thomas called as I was checking out of the hotel. "How are you doing this morning? Better?" I filled him in on the shocking developments. "My God," he said when I finished. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going over there. They need help sorting this out." "Madison," his voice was cautious. "Are you sure that's best? After everything they said to you? What choice do I have? They're still my parents." "You have every choice. You could come home. You could let them face the consequences of their choices for once." I paused, luggage in hand. "Would you respect me if I did that?" "I would understand completely if you did," he said carefully. "But I also understand why you won't. It's who you are. Just protect yourself this time. Okay, don't let them pull you back into old patterns. I won't, I promised. I'll call you after I see them. The drive to my parents' house felt surreal. Less than 24 hours ago, I'd fled in tears after being dismissed and devalued yet again. Now, I was returning to pick up the pieces of a crisis that confirmed everything I'd tried to tell them. Mom opened the door before I could knock, her face pale and drawn. Madison, thank you for coming. She reached for me, then hesitated, uncertain of her welcome. I stepped forward and hugged her. Whatever had happened, she was still my mother, and she was in pain. Dad sat at the kitchen table looking older than I'd ever seen him. A blood pressure monitor lay beside him, along with his heart medications. Madison, his voice cracked. I don't know where to begin. The beginning would be good, I said, sitting down across from him. Over the next hour, they laid out the full story. Emma's financial difficulties had actually been gambling debts, tens of thousands of dollars lost at casinos and online betting sites. Her boyfriend Kevin had encouraged her habit, while developing a scheme to systematically drain my parents' accounts. Emma had started small, forging checks for a few $100s, borrowing their credit cards, but graduated to more significant fraud as her addiction worsened. The money my parents had given her included some legitimate gifts, but far more unauthorized withdrawals. The signature on yesterday's bank withdrawal hadn't been forged. Emma had slipped the form into a stack of medical paperwork for Dad to sign. We were blind, Mom said, wiping tears. We made excuses for her behavior for so long that we couldn't see what was happening right in front of us. Dad reached across the table, his hand trembling slightly. You tried to tell us. We didn't listen. I'm so sorry for what I said last night. I was angry and defensive because deep down I knew you were right. I took his hand, feeling the familiar calluses of my childhood. The hands that had taught me to ride a bike, build a birdhouse, change a tire. Hands that had always been there for me, even when his heart had seemed to favor Emma. What happens now? I asked. The police are looking for Emma and Kevin, Dad explained. The bank has frozen what little remains in our accounts during the investigation. Richard is helping us file the necessary reports for insurance claims, but most of our savings are just gone. And the home equity loan? We managed to stop that transaction, Mom said. But our checking and savings accounts were emptied, over $40,000. What about your retirement accounts? They exchanged glances. Emma didn't have access to those, Dad said, but we had already withdrawn significant amounts to help with what we thought were her legitimate financial problems. I took a deep breath. So where does this leave you financially? The answer was grim. Between the unauthorized withdrawals, the loans they'd given Emma, believing her various stories, and the depletion of their retirement savings, my parents were nearly bankrupt. The house had a mortgage again after decades of being paid off. Dad's medical bills, which I'd been paying, would continue for the foreseeable future. We'll have to sell the house, Dad said, his voice hollow. Downsize significantly. And Emma? I asked. When they find her? Richard says we have a strong case for financial elder abuse, Mom said, her voice hardening slightly. Even though we enabled a lot of it through our own blindness. We've updated our will, Dad added quietly. This morning, Richard brought the papers. I shook my head. That's not why I'm here. I don't care about the will. We know, Mom said. But we care. We were wrong, Madison. So wrong for so long. About everything. The vindication I might have expected to feel was overshadowed by sadness. My parents looked broken, not just financially, but spiritually. Their worldview had been shattered. The daughter they'd favored and protected had betrayed them completely, while the daughter they'd taken for granted had remained steadfast. What do you need from me right now? I asked, setting aside the complex emotions for more practical concerns. Just your help navigating this mess, Dad said. Your judgment has always been better than ours. We spent the day contacting banks, insurance companies, and credit agencies. I called Thomas to let him know I'd be staying a few more days. He was supportive, but cautious. Just remember to maintain your boundaries, he said. Help them, but don't let them make this your problem to solve entirely. I won't, I promised. This is different. They're actually listening to me for once. Over the next 3 days, the situation evolved rapidly. The police found Emma and Kevin attempting to cross the Canadian border. Most of the money was gone, gambled away, or used to pay previous debts. My parents had to make statements, provide evidence of the fraud. It was humiliating for them, having to admit how thoroughly they had been deceived. Through it all, I remained clear-eyed and practical, helping where I could without taking over completely. This was their situation to manage with my support rather than my control. On my fourth day in Boston, as we sat having coffee after another meeting with the lawyer, Mom looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "How did we get it so wrong, Madison? How did we not see who Emma really was? Who you really were?" I considered my answer carefully. "I think you saw what you wanted to see in both of us. Emma needed you more, or seemed to, and that made you feel important. I was independent, which made me seem less deserving of attention or support." Dad nodded slowly. "We mistook your strength for not needing us, and we mistook Emma's dependence for love. I did need you," I said quietly. "Just not financially. I needed your recognition, your equal love, your respect." "We failed you," Mom said simply, "and we can never make that right." "You can start now," I replied. "That's all any of us can ever do. Start from where we are." For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly seen by my parents. Not as the responsible daughter who could handle anything, not as the successful career woman who didn't need support, but as a person who had been hurt by their choices and who deserved better. The realization didn't fix everything. Decades of family dynamics don't change overnight. But it was a beginning. The next few months brought dramatic changes to my family. Emma was charged with financial elder abuse and fraud. She accepted a plea deal that included restitution payments, community service, and mandatory gambling addiction treatment. My parents, with incredible difficulty, maintained the boundaries their lawyers and counselors recommended. They supported Emma's recovery efforts, but refused to provide any financial assistance or housing. My parents sold their house, the home I'd grown up in, and purchased a small, manageable condo in a nearby town. The downsizing was painful, but necessary. With the proceeds from the house sale, they paid off the new mortgage and stabilized their finances. Dad's health gradually improved as the financial stress decreased, and he committed fully to his recovery plan. I returned to Chicago, but flew back monthly to help with various aspects of the transition. Thomas came with me occasionally, developing a new, more balanced relationship with my parents, one based on mutual respect rather than the strained tolerance of the past. My parents' lawyer helped them create a comprehensive financial plan that included protections against future exploitation. They named me their financial power of attorney, a responsibility I accepted with careful consideration. We established clear boundaries and expectations, ensuring I wouldn't become entangled in day-to-day management of their affairs, unless absolutely necessary. Family therapy became a cornerstone of our healing process. Initially, my parents attended alone, working through their feelings of betrayal, guilt, and shame. Later, I joined several sessions where we addressed the long-standing patterns of favoritism and their impact on our relationships. "I always thought Emma needed us more," Mom admitted during one particularly emotional session. "It never occurred to me that by treating you differently, we were teaching both of you harmful lessons. Emma, that she could take without giving, and you, that your worth was tied to your usefulness." These conversations were difficult but necessary. Years of unspoken hurts and expectations were finally acknowledged. We didn't always agree, and sometimes old patterns reasserted themselves, but the difference was that now we recognized them when they appeared. Emma's journey was complicated. After completing her court-mandated treatment program, she reached out to our parents with a partial but seemingly genuine apology. Her relationship with Kevin had ended when they were arrested, and she claimed to have had no idea how deep his financial schemes went. This was difficult to believe given the evidence, but addiction can cloud judgment in profound ways. My relationship with Emma remained distant. The betrayal of our parents was just the most recent in a lifetime of self-centered choices that had affected me. While I wished her well in her recovery, I maintained firm boundaries around our interaction. "She's asked to see you," Mom told me during one of my visits about 6 months after everything had happened. "I'm not ready for that," I replied honestly. "Maybe someday, but not yet." Mom nodded, accepting my decision without the guilt trips of the past. "I understand. Take whatever time you need." This simple respect for my feelings marked how much had changed between us. Meanwhile, my life in Chicago continued to flourish. The crisis with my family had prompted Thomas and me to have serious conversations about our own future. We decided to start trying for a baby, something we'd been discussing for years, but never quite felt ready for. 3 months later, I was pregnant. Telling my parents was one of the most joyful moments we'd shared in years. Their genuine excitement and immediate offers of support, offers that acknowledged my autonomy rather than assuming control, showed how far we'd come. "We'll come visit after the baby arrives whenever you're ready for guests," Mom said. "Just tell us when." "And we've set up a college fund," Dad added. "It's small to start, but we'll add to it regularly." "You don't need to do that," I protested. "Your finances are stabilized," Dad interrupted gently. "This is important to us, Madison. We want to be good grandparents, which starts with being better parents to you." A year after the dramatic revelation of Emma's betrayal, my parents came to Chicago for the birth of their first grandchild, a daughter we named Sophia. Watching my father hold her with tears in his eyes, I felt the last pieces of resentment I'd been carrying start to dissolve. "She's perfect," he whispered, "just like her mother." Mom squeezed my hand. "We're so proud of you, Madison, not because of your success or your strength, but because of who you are." Those words, the simple acknowledgement I'd longed for my entire life, meant everything. Emma eventually reached out directly, sending a carefully worded email congratulating me on Sophia's birth. I responded with a brief but civil note, leaving the door open to possible reconciliation without rushing the process. Some wounds take longer to heal than others. My parents continued their own healing journey. They joined support groups for families affected by gambling addiction and financial fraud. Dad volunteered with a senior center, helping other older adults recognize and avoid financial scams. Mom found new purpose in downsized living, embracing a simpler lifestyle with unexpected enthusiasm. They visited Chicago quarterly, developing a relationship with Sophia based on joy rather than obligation. I watched them carefully for signs of the old patterns, the tendency to control, to dismiss, to favor, but saw instead two people working consciously to create healthier connections. The inheritance that had once been a painful symbol of my lesser status in the family was now a non-issue. My parents had restructured their will to be equitable, but more importantly, they had restructured our relationship to be based on genuine respect and love, rather than assumptions and old patterns. 2 years after that life-changing text from my father, "Don't reach out or visit, we're done," my family gathered in Chicago to celebrate Sophia's first birthday. My parents, now comfortable in their new life, had flown in 3 days early to spend extra time with their granddaughter. Emma, after months of consistent recovery and slowly rebuilding trust through small verified actions, had been invited for the actual birthday, her first visit to my home. As I watched my daughter toddle between family members, accepting love and attention from each, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. The pain had been immense, the betrayal deep, the reconstitution of relationships slow and sometimes stumbling. But something authentic had emerged from the ashes of our former dysfunctional family system. Thomas found me in a quiet moment, slipping his arm around my waist as we observed the party from the kitchen doorway. "How are you feeling about all this?" he asked softly. I considered the question carefully. "Peaceful mostly. There's still sadness for what we lost and what we never had. But I'm grateful for what we're building now." "Your parents have really changed," he acknowledged. "I wouldn't have believed it possible." "Sometimes it takes losing everything to find what matters," I said, watching as Dad helped Sophia stack blocks, his patience infinite with her repeated demolitions. Mom approached us, wineglass in hand. "She's so much like you were at this age," she said. "Determined, focused, but she laughs more easily." She paused, looking at me directly. "I think that's your doing, creating a home where she feels completely secure in being loved." The simple acknowledgement brought tears to my eyes. "That's all I ever wanted for her." "And for yourself," Mom said gently. "Which you deserve too." Emma remained a complicated presence in our lives. Her recovery seemed genuine, but trust once broken so thoroughly rebuilds in tiny increments. She played with Sophia carefully, as if aware that she was being evaluated not just on her relationship with her niece, but on her capacity for care and responsibility in general. Later, as the party wound down and Sophia napped upstairs, Emma and I found ourselves alone on the back deck. "Your house is beautiful," she said. "You've built an amazing life." "Thank you," I replied, unsure where this conversation might go. "I think about it a lot, how differently things turned out for us," she continued. "For years, I thought I was the lucky one getting all the help and support. Now, I see that you got the better deal. You learned to stand on your own feet." I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw for the first time the weight of her own struggles. "It wasn't about luck, Emma. It was about choices. Every day we make choices that shape who we become. I made terrible choices, she acknowledged. I hurt everyone who loved me. Yes, I said simply. You did. Do you think you'll ever fully forgive me? She asked, her voice small. I considered my answer carefully. I think forgiveness is a process, not an event. I'm working on it, but it will take time. What matters more than forgiveness is building something new, something healthier for all of us, including Sophia. Emma nodded. I'd like to be part of that, if you'll let me. One day at a time, I replied. That's all any of us can do. That evening, after everyone had left and Sophia was asleep, Thomas and I sat on our porch swing, watching the sunset over the Chicago skyline. You know what I realized today? I said, leaning against his shoulder. What's that? That sometimes the most painful experiences lead to the most important growth. If my parents had treated me equally all along, if they hadn't favored Emma, if none of this had happened, we might still be stuck in those dysfunctional patterns, never addressing the real issues. Thomas considered this. Maybe. Or maybe you would have had a normal, healthy family all along. I smiled. Perhaps, but then I might not have developed the strength and independence that make me who I am. I might not have learned the importance of standing up for myself, of setting boundaries, of speaking truth, even when it's difficult. Your daughter will learn those things without the pain, he pointed out. That's my hope. I agreed. That she'll learn from our journey rather than having to take the same difficult path. The growth in my family relationships didn't erase the past. There were still moments of tension, old patterns that threatened to reassert themselves, wounds that stung when accidentally touched. But there was also something new: awareness, accountability, and genuine effort to create healthier connections. I've learned that self-worth can't come from external validation, even from parents. It must be built from within through integrity, through standing in your truth even when it's painful, through maintaining boundaries with those who would diminish you, even those who are supposed to love you most. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about erasing wrongs, but about freeing yourself from the weight of resentment. It doesn't require forgetting or even reconciliation, though those are possible gifts that may follow. I've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and let people face the consequences of their choices. My parents needed to see Emma's betrayal clearly before they could begin their own healing journey. And I've learned that families, like individuals, can transform. Not easily, not quickly, and never perfectly, but meaningfully, with work and willingness and time. As Sophia grows, she will inherit not the dysfunctional patterns of the past, but the hard-won wisdom that came from breaking them. That is a legacy worth far more than any house or financial inheritance. Sometimes losing what you thought you wanted opens the door to what you truly need. For me, that wasn't my parents' approval or equal treatment in their will. It was the discovery of my own voice, the strength to use it, and the creation of authentic relationships built on mutual respect rather than obligation. Have you ever had to stand up to your family for your own well-being? Did it lead to positive change or painful distance? Leave a comment below sharing your experience. And if my story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding strength through difficulty. Remember that your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. It's inherent in who you are. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you courage in your own.